They say family and business don't mix. I never believed that. Until the day my brother fired me. My name is Lily Maddox, and for the past 12 years, I was the director of operations at Maddox & Company, a third-generation logistics company our grandfather started with a single delivery truck in 1958. My office wasn't flashy. No floor-to-ceiling windows or leather chairs. But from that modest space, I kept our warehouses humming, our contracts on schedule, and our staff supported. Then my older brother, Darren, was named CEO. It was a quiet Thursday morning when he summoned me to the boardroom. The air was heavy with new energy. Fake smiles, tighter suits, and that consultant from McCallum Strategies who kept calling me old school behind closed doors. Darren stood at the head of the table, flanked by 2 board members and 1 legal advisor. "Lily," he began, not meeting my eyes, "you've done good work here. But the company is entering a new phase. We need leadership that reflects our future, not our past." I blinked. "Is this a restructuring conversation?" "It's a termination conversation," he said flatly. "Effective immediately. You're no longer needed here, little sister." The words didn't register at first. I looked around, expecting someone to speak up, to object. No one did. "After everything," I started, my voice cracking before I could stop it. 12 years, Darren. I built this company with you." He shrugged. "You did your part. Now let the professionals take over." He slid a folder toward me. Severance package, NDA, non-compete clause. All pre-signed. I closed the folder slowly and stood. "What about the vendor transition plans? The international licensing agreement? The Portwell contract?" "We'll manage," he said, his tone dismissive. That word echoed in my head like a hammer strike. Manage. I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I picked up the photo of our grandfather on my desk, him standing in front of his first truck in a worn jacket, grinning, and walked out. That afternoon, as I packed my things, Amanda from accounting knocked gently on my door. She didn't say much, just stood there and mouthed, "I'm sorry." I nodded, but inside something had shifted. Not grief, not even anger. It was clarity. Darren thought I was replaceable. What he didn't know, what he hadn't cared to learn, was that for the past 18 months, I'd been working closely with our largest vendor, SwiftLink Logistics, to develop a proprietary scheduling system that saved them nearly $3 million in annual shipping errors. That contract wasn't with Maddox & Company. It was with me. See, our grandfather always said, "Don't just build your name. Build your leverage." It was advice I took to heart. While Darren was busy whining and dining investors, I was in the trenches building real relationships, ones that mattered. When I left the building that day, I didn't just walk away from a job. I walked into an opportunity Darren never saw coming. The next morning, I met with Marcus Ellington, the CEO of SwiftLink. He greeted me with a firm handshake and a sympathetic smile. "He really fired you?" "Didn't even flinch," I said. "But I have a proposal." 3 days later, Maddox & Company's biggest vendor sent an unexpected notice of contract termination, citing misalignment of operational values. Friday morning, 9:14 a.m., Darren called their office in a panic. He didn't get Marcus. He got me. "Hello?" he barked, clearly expecting someone else. "This is Lily Maddox," I said evenly, "the new CEO of Ellington Maddox Logistics." Silence. "I believe you were calling about your canceled shipments?" For a man who always loved the sound of his own voice, Darren was shockingly quiet. I could almost hear his thoughts racing through the phone, trying to piece it all together. Ellington Maddox Logistics. My voice on the other end. His top vendor now answering to me. I think there's been some confusion," he stammered finally. "I was calling Marcus." "Marcus retired last week," I said calmly. "I bought his stake in the company. We've restructured." "You?" His voice climbed with disbelief. "You're running SwiftLink now?" "Ellington Maddox Logistics," I corrected. "And yes, you fired me, Darren. I had some free time. I let the silence stretch, savoring the weight of his panic. This is ridiculous, he said. We have a contract. You did, I said. That contract expired last quarter. You never renewed it. Marcus offered. You ignored. You were too busy bringing in those McCallum consultants. I could practically hear the color draining from his face. But, look, we've got shipments scheduled, routes planned. You can't just fire the person holding your supply chain together, I said, my voice flat now. But you did. I ended the call before he could respond. The next few days were chaos for Maddox and Company. I didn't need insider access to see it. I still had friends inside, people loyal to the company, if not to my brother. They called, they texted, they vented. Warehouse 4 ran out of containers. Drivers sat idle without manifests. 2 international clients received wrong shipments and began preparing penalty claims. And still, Darren refused to call me again. Instead, he scrambled to find a replacement vendor. But here's the thing about relationships. They're built on time, trust, and consistency, not quick deals made out of desperation. He called Freight North, then Transjet, then Ocean Path. Each gave him the same answer: no capacity. It wasn't personal. It was just business. Or so it seemed. The truth was, I'd quietly built a new coalition. 5 logistics companies who were tired of Darren's dismissiveness, his short tempers, and his broken promises. Together, we shared routes, staff, and most importantly, information. Darren hadn't just lost a vendor. He'd lost access. My father called that Friday evening. First time since the firing. I don't want to get in the middle of this, he said, but your brother is under pressure. I'm aware, I said. He's not sleeping. The board's questioning him. We've lost 3 major contracts this week. I know, I said again. He was quiet for a moment. Lily, you always said you didn't want the spotlight. I still don't. Then why are you doing this? I sighed. I'm not sabotaging Darren. I'm protecting what matters. People, clients, reputation. He left those things in my hands for 12 years and never learned how to hold them himself. My father didn't reply. Not because he disagreed, but because he knew I was right. 3 days later, I walked into a meeting room at the Ellington Maddox headquarters, a modest space near the Boston Harbor where everything smelled like fresh paint and possibility. My assistant, Nina, handed me a folder. Update on the vendor expansion plan, she said. Also, 3 of your former warehouse managers are asking to join us. They've already resigned. I opened the folder slowly. Inside were applications, resumes, and handwritten notes from people I'd trained, coached, and believed in. People Darren had sidelined or overlooked. You think they're ready? I asked. Nina smiled. They said, wherever Lily goes, we go. It wasn't revenge, I felt. It was something steadier, stronger, momentum. That week, Maddox and Company's stock dipped 7% after a supply chain analyst flagged significant disruptions in their vendor operations. Industry newsletters picked up the story. They speculated about instability, mismanagement, rumors of layoffs. And then came the Whisper Network. Lily Maddox didn't disappear. She's back. And she's building something. I never confirmed anything. I didn't need to. People saw the writing on the wall. Darren, meanwhile, doubled down. Publicly, he insisted things were fine. Internally, he cut costs, slashed hours, and pressured departments to do more with less. Morale collapsed. Turnover spiked. He didn't understand that the backbone of a business isn't its tech, its offices, or its branding consultants. It's people. And people remember how you treat them. On a quiet Saturday morning, I returned to our grandfather's gravesite. It had been 5 years since my last visit. I brought coffee and sat on the old bench beneath the oak tree he used to love. I know this isn't how you wanted the company to be, I said softly, but I'm trying. The wind rustled the leaves gently, and I imagined him smiling with that crooked grin of his, the one that meant keep going. I pulled out my phone and opened a spreadsheet. Numbers, routes, margins, all of it humming like a song I knew by heart. One by one, the pieces were coming together. And Darren hadn't even noticed the storm was just beginning. Darren had always been a showman. Even when we were kids, he'd line up our cousins in the backyard and announce himself as captain before assigning chores like they were combat missions. He loved attention, craved admiration, and as CEO, he assumed the same instincts would keep him safe. But business isn't a talent show, and the spotlight can turn cruel when results don't follow the performance. By mid-month, cracks in Darren's leadership were no longer rumors. They were reality. His flashy new consultants from McCallum Strategies had promised efficiency and scalability. Instead, they'd slashed frontline staff, renegotiated supplier terms without understanding the service demands, and replaced key warehouse systems with a platform no one could operate without a week-long training session. Deliveries were late. Clients were furious. And internally, employees were starting to whisper what no one had dared to say aloud. Maybe Lily was the one actually running things. It was a Tuesday morning when I got a call from Vanessa, one of the board members I hadn't spoken to since my firing. "I hope you don't mind me reaching out," she said cautiously. "Not at all," I replied, curious. "Is it true?" she asked. "About you and Ellington Maddox?" I didn't answer directly. "Why are you asking?" She sighed. "Because we have a problem. Darren briefed us last night. Our 4 largest clients are threatening to leave. He blamed vendor issues, but those issues started after he fired the person managing those relationships." I finished for her. "Exactly." There was a pause. "Would you ever consider returning to Maddox and Company?" I didn't hesitate. "No." Another pause. "Not even in a leadership role?" "I'm not interested in cleaning up someone else's mess," I said gently, especially when I warned them not to make it in the first place. She didn't argue. "I thought you should know. There's a special board session Friday. Performance review. It's not going to be pretty." I thanked her and hung up, my thoughts already racing. Darren wouldn't see it coming. And that was the problem. That afternoon, I sat down with my legal advisor, Eva Chen, at a quiet downtown cafe. I'd brought a thick folder of documents, partnership agreements, growth projections, and client feedback. "I want to make sure we're protected," I told her. "This isn't just about competition anymore. It's about legacy." Eva flipped through the pages, nodding. "These contracts are rock solid. You're not just growing, you're becoming the alternative." "That's the idea." She glanced up. "You do know Darren might try to sue, right? For interference, IP theft, whatever he can come up with." I smiled faintly. "Let him try. I didn't take a single client. They came to me." And that was true. I hadn't poached. I hadn't whispered behind doors. I'd simply stood still while everything Darren built began to crumble under its own weight. Meanwhile, inside Maddox and Company, things were unraveling faster than the PR team could spin. A photo surfaced on LinkedIn of me shaking hands with the COO of Carrington and Ellis, our former largest client. The caption, "New partnerships, new possibilities." Within hours, industry forums exploded. Darren's leadership was called reckless. Maddox and Company was labeled unstable. And suddenly, a quiet wave of resignations swept through the company. Middle managers, drivers, logistics coordinators, the people who made things work. Most of them came to me. That Friday, Darren stood before the board. 10 people who had once praised his vision. Now they wanted explanations. He opened with a rehearsed speech about temporary disruptions and agile pivots. But the numbers didn't lie. Net revenue had dropped 14% in 6 weeks. Client retention was spiraling. Internal surveys showed employee satisfaction had hit an all-time low. Then came the final blow. Vanessa passed around a report compiled by a third-party analyst. It showed that under Darren's leadership, Maddox and Company had lost 38% of its operational value due to failed integrations, vendor instability, and executive mismanagement. Darren tried to shift the blame on me, on old systems, on the market, but the board had stopped listening. That evening, he did something I never expected. He showed up at my condo. I opened the door to find him on my doorstep, shoulders tense, tie loosened, eyes rimmed with fatigue. "I need to talk," he said. I stepped aside. He paced the living room like a caged animal. "Do you know what they said in that meeting? They think I've ruined everything." I sat quietly, let him rant. "Do you know what it's like to be told you're not good enough? That you're just a placeholder until someone better comes along?" I looked at him for a long moment. "Yes," I said softly. "I do." He froze. I stood. "You didn't just fire your sister, Darren. You fired the only person who ever told you the truth. And now you're standing on a throne built from sand." He didn't argue. He just nodded, defeated, and then he left. The Monday after Darren showed up at my condo, the board of Maddox and Company called an emergency vote. I wasn't there, of course. I hadn't set foot in that building since the day he fired me. But I heard what happened. Vanessa later told me that Darren had come in looking haggard, his voice low, his presentation shorter than usual. For the first time since becoming CEO, he had no graphs, no slogans, no ambitious projections. Just excuses. The vote wasn't unanimous, but it didn't need to be. 5 out of 9 members approved a motion to strip him of executive authority, pending a full performance audit. The words were formal, clinical, but everyone knew what it meant. Darren was CEO in name only. His power had been reduced to figurehead status, effective immediately. But what came next surprised everyone. The board didn't appoint a replacement from within. They sent me an invitation. I opened the email at my kitchen table, coffee in hand, sun pouring through the window like everything was suddenly brighter. "We would like to invite you to a private meeting to discuss strategic options for Maddox and Company moving forward. Your perspective is vital." Vital. 12 years of unseen effort, of early mornings and quiet successes. And now, vital. I stared at the screen for a long time before closing my laptop. That night, I took a walk through our old distribution lot in Everett. The place had been a second home to me once. I could still name every crew chief and which loading bay always stuck during winter. I remembered sitting on the edge of Dock 3 with my grandfather, him sipping tea from a thermos while explaining how to spot a weak link in a supply chain. It's not the slowest part, Lily. It's the part no one's watching. That's what breaks first. The company had become exactly that, a machine with no one watching the important parts. Now the board wanted me to fix it. But I wasn't sure I wanted to. At the meeting the next day, they gave me the seat opposite the head of the table. Darren's old spot. He wasn't there. "Thank you for coming," Vanessa began. The others nodded, some with awkward smiles, others avoiding eye contact. "We need your insight," said Gregory, a senior board member who once called me just logistics. I looked around at the faces of people who had watched me get pushed out, who said nothing as my brother erased me from the company my family built. "You're in a difficult position," I said finally, "and I understand that. But I'm not here to take over. I've built something of my own now, something I believe in." A ripple of disappointment moved across the room. "But I will help," I added, lifting my eyes to meet theirs. "On one condition." Vanessa leaned forward. "What's that?" "I want full access to the financials, vendor agreements, staffing reports. Everything. No more secrets, no more politics. If you want me to help stabilize this company, then I need to know exactly how broken it is." They agreed unanimously. And just like that, I became the invisible CEO. No title, no press release, just the real work. The deeper I dug, the worse it got. A major client had filed a breach of contract suit. Several supplier contracts were set to auto-renew with inflated pricing clauses Darren never read. 3 warehouses were understaffed, and one hadn't been inspected in months. But what hurt the most were the internal emails I found. Ones between Darren and the McCallum consultants. "She's too soft to lead," one had written. "Too emotional. She gets too close to the staff." Too emotional. The phrase stuck with me, like compassion was a flaw. Like knowing your employees' kids' names made you weak. They didn't understand. People stay for leaders who care. And now, most of those people were with me at Ellington Maddox. One night, I called Miguel, my former warehouse lead from our Brooklyn facility. He now ran one of my new depots with a level of loyalty you couldn't buy. "Do you think we could support a temporary supply boost?" I asked. He didn't even hesitate. "For Maddox?" "Yes, but they don't know it's from us." He laughed. "You really are your grandfather's granddaughter." We rerouted inventory, quietly covered routes, sent backup trucks to clients still under Maddox's banner. No press, no signatures, just help. Sometimes revenge wasn't loud. Sometimes it was kindness withheld, then returned on your own terms. A week later, I received a message from Darren. "Thank you. I know it was you." Just 7 words. No apology, no justification, but maybe, just maybe, a sliver of understanding. I didn't reply. Some things didn't need words. The foundation was still cracked. But it was holding, and I was done being the silent backbone. Now I was the architect. The board scheduled its final vote on Darren's position for a Friday morning. I wasn't invited officially, but Vanessa had already texted, "Please be nearby," just in case. By then, I'd reviewed every document, every vendor contract, every policy Darren had altered, neglected, or flat out ignored. What I found painted a clear picture. Not of a villain, but of a man out of his depth. He hadn't meant to destroy Maddox and company. He'd just been too proud to admit he wasn't qualified to lead it. Still, intent didn't erase damage. That morning, I sat across the street in a small cafe with my laptop open and my phone silent, sipping tea and watching the glass-fronted office building that had once been my second home. It felt like watching an old friend undergo surgery. Inside the boardroom, the atmosphere was tense. Vanessa later told me Darren had walked in dressed to win. Dark suit, crisp tie, all confidence. He brought a slideshow, charts, projections, even a revised business plan. The problem? It was too late. The numbers were in. The clients were gone. And the trust? Shattered. What none of them expected, though, was Darren's final move. "I've secured a private investor," he announced as he clicked to the last slide. "Willing to inject $4.2 million in exchange for a minority stake and a seat on the board." That got their attention. Gregory leaned forward. "Who's the investor?" Darren hesitated. "I'm not at liberty to name them until the vote is complete." And that was his mistake. The board smelled the bluff immediately. It was a desperate play, one designed to make them hesitate. But the board didn't need hesitation. They needed leadership. And Darren, no matter how well dressed, no longer inspired confidence. The vote was called. 7 votes, 6 to remove him. 1 abstention. Vanessa. She told me later, "I didn't vote because I didn't want to be the one to push him over the edge, but I also didn't want to save him." Darren was officially out. 2 hours later, I got a call from the board chair. "We've appointed an interim leadership committee, but we'd like to bring you in. Formally this time." "Under what terms?" I asked. "We're open to negotiation." I closed my laptop and exhaled. The moment I had imagined for weeks was here. The company that cast me out now wanted me to return and rebuild what Darren broke. But I wasn't the same person they fired. I'd built something better, more agile, more personal, and more respected. Ellington Maddox wasn't just successful, it was admired. So I asked for something bold. "I want joint ownership," I said. "A controlling interest in Maddox and Company equal to the board's total. You want me to rebuild the company? I want to own the foundation this time." There was silence. I'll bring over my team, offer client stability, reestablish vendor trust, and restore our reputation, I continued. But I don't report to anyone who once stayed silent when I was pushed out. To my surprise, they didn't reject the offer. They asked for a proposal. That night, I met Darren one last time. He texted, "You in? Coffee?" We met at a 24-hour diner near the docks, the kind of place our grandfather used to love. Greasy tables, perfect pancakes, and waitresses who remembered your name after one visit. He looked tired. Really tired. "I didn't mean for it to go like this," he said quietly. "I know. I thought you'd always be in the background, holding things together, that I'd take us forward." "You didn't take us anywhere, Darren. You walked ahead without checking if anyone was following." He nodded slowly. "So what now? You take over? You run it all?" I looked at him for a long time. "No," I said. "I'm not taking over. I'm taking it back. The people, the values, the legacy. You can hate me for that, but it was never yours alone." He didn't argue. He just pushed his plate away and stood. "For what it's worth," he said, "you deserved the title long before I ever wore it." I didn't respond. Some things didn't need answering. The next morning, I met with my attorney, finalized the proposal, and submitted it to the board. By week's end, it was approved. Maddox and Company would merge with Ellington Maddox under a dual-brand transition. I would lead the new entity as managing director, with full control over restructuring, staff retention, and client relations. There were headlines, industry blogs, quiet congratulations from people who once called me too soft. I didn't care about any of it. What mattered most was the staff meeting I held the following Monday. I stood at the front of the room, same room Darren had fired me in, and looked out over a sea of faces I hadn't seen in months. "I'm not here to celebrate," I said. "I'm here to rebuild. With you." A murmur ran through the crowd. I know it's been broken, and I know who broke it. But more importantly, I know who held it together as long as they could. There were tears, and applause, and quiet smiles. This wasn't revenge. This was restoration. 6 months after the merger, I walked through the newly redesigned Maddox and Company headquarters with a coffee in one hand and a hard hat in the other. The building was alive again. Voices carried from open-plan departments. Forklifts beeped rhythmically in the distance. There were new hires, returning veterans, and familiar faces I hadn't seen since the day I was fired. They didn't whisper anymore. They smiled, stopped me in hallways, asked questions, shared wins. And in return, I made one promise. No corner office, no closed doors. Leadership wouldn't be a title. It would be a presence. The new Maddox wasn't flashy, but it was resilient. We reinvested in employee training, reinstated full benefits, and launched a rotating leadership program to develop future managers from within. The company was finally becoming what it should have been all along. Not a dynasty of power, but a platform for people. That fall, I attended a logistics summit in Chicago. On the last evening, I was asked to speak on a panel titled Resilience in Legacy Businesses. When it was my turn, the moderator asked, "What's the most important lesson you've learned since taking over your family company?" I didn't hesitate. "Legacy isn't what you inherit," I said. "It's what you build when no one's watching." There was a long pause, followed by quiet applause. Not because it was a flashy answer, but because it was true. That winter, I received a letter from Darren. A real letter. Not an email, not a text. It was short, handwritten in that stiff, overly neat way he always wrote when he was nervous. "Lily, I've taken a role with a nonprofit focused on mentorship for underprivileged youth. I'm learning how to listen. Finally, I just wanted to say thank you for holding the family together, even when I didn't deserve to be part of it." I folded the note carefully and placed it in the drawer of my desk, next to our grandfather's pocket watch and a photo of the original delivery truck, taken in 1959. Forgiveness, I was learning, didn't always need to be spoken aloud. Sometimes it was just a door you quietly left unlocked. In January, I visited our original warehouse in Everett again. This time, I wasn't alone. 24 employees, new recruits, and seasoned veterans stood with me on a bitter cold morning as we unveiled a small brass plaque bolted into the concrete outside loading dock 3. It read, "In memory of Harold Maddox, who taught us that the strongest parts of any company are the ones you can't see." Miguel wiped a tear from his cheek. He would have loved this. I nodded, running my gloved fingers over the engraved words. He would have hated the plaque, though. Said it was too fancy. Everyone laughed. That evening, back at home, I sat on my balcony overlooking the harbor. The same place I sat the morning after Darren fired me. The same view. But everything had changed. A soft knock came at the door. It was my niece and nephew, Darren's kids, holding a tray of homemade cookies and 2 mugs of cocoa. Their mom waited in the car, but they came bounding in like it was their second home. "Uncle Darren said you're the boss of everything now," Ava said proudly. I smiled. "Only the boring stuff." "Can we come see the trucks again sometime?" asked Jack, his eyes wide. "Of course," I said. "But only if you promise to wear a hard hat." They giggled. Family had become complicated, bruised, but not broken. I'd worked hard to keep the rift from extending to the next generation. Because if there's one thing this whole journey taught me, it's this. Power fades, titles change, but what we pass down, that shapes the future. As the sun dipped below the skyline, I looked out at the water one last time. Not for reflection, but for peace. Everything I had built, lost, and rebuilt again was rooted in a truth I now carried like armor. Success wasn't about proving someone wrong. It was about proving something right. That kindness wasn't weakness. That stability didn't need spotlight. That the quiet ones, the patient ones, could not only endure the storm, but build something better in its wake. And that foundations matter. Because anyone can sit in the biggest office, but only a few understand what holds the building up. I had been working 12-hour shifts for the better part of a year. No weekends off, no long lunches, no vacations. Just me, a bottomless mug of coffee, and a mountain of deadlines that never seemed to shrink. When my coworkers left at 5, I stayed. When they took PTO, I covered for them. And I never complained. Not once. Why? Because I believed in what I was building. I believed that if I worked hard enough, someone would notice. That it would all be worth it. And maybe, just maybe, I'd finally be seen. So when a longtime client, Rachel Grant, emailed me personally after a major account renewal and said, "We couldn't have done this without you, Mandy. Check your inbox in 5 minutes." I was stunned. I refreshed my email. Once, twice. And then it appeared. Subject: "Thank you. 2 tickets to Elton John. Front row." I stared at the screen, then blinked and stared again. 2 VIP passes. Row A. "Farewell Yellow Brick Road Tour." A dream. See, what most people don't know about me is that my dad used to play Elton John on the record player every Sunday. It's how I learned to spell crocodile. It's how I learned that music could be a language for love, grief, rebellion, and hope, all at once. And now, Elton John, front row. For me. My heart pounded so hard I could barely breathe. I texted my sister immediately. "Mandy, you're not going to believe what just happened." She responded with 20 question marks and a string of emojis before I even had a chance to explain. But first, I wanted to do things right. The client had sent the tickets to the office under my name. Our company policy required that all client packages be signed for at the reception desk and routed through the admin assistant, Carmen, who then handed them off to the appropriate team. It was just a formality. I wasn't worried. Until I wasn't. 2 hours passed. Nothing. By 4 p.m., I walked over to Carmen's desk. "Hey, did a package come in for me?" She frowned, clicked through a few logs, then nodded. "Yeah, something from Ticket Wave." Ms. Blake picked it up, said it was time sensitive. My stomach dipped. Ms. Blake. Vanessa Blake. My boss. Vice President of Client Strategy. The woman who wore red lipstick like war paint and smiled like it hurt her face. She never stayed past 5, never skipped lunch, and never missed a chance to remind me of how replaceable people can be. I walked calmly to her office and knocked. Twice. No response. Her lights were still on, but her purse was gone. So was her coat. She had left early. I stood there for a moment, hand on the doorknob, debating whether I was being paranoid. Maybe she took them to give them to me in person tomorrow. Maybe she just... No, I knew better. I opened my email. Nothing from her. No note. No congrats. So I waited. All weekend, sick with anxiety, checking my inbox like a lovesick teenager. Nothing. Then Monday morning rolled around. Vanessa strutted into the office wearing oversized sunglasses and humming softly under her breath. I froze. Was she? Singing Tiny Dancer? She dropped her purse on her desk, took off her sunglasses, and turned to me. "Oh, Mandy," she said sweetly. "Fun weekend?" I swallowed. "Actually, I was wondering if you received a package on Friday. It was addressed to me." She smiled, too wide, too rehearsed. "Oh, those tickets? Yeah, I took care of them. Don't worry about it." I blinked. "You took care of them?" She waved her manicured hand. "Those were from a client. It reflects on the firm, not just on you. I thought it'd be better to use them as a networking opportunity. I took the CEO of Carrington Group. Big potential deal." She tilted her head as if she expected me to thank her. I kept my voice level. "But the client sent them to me, personally." She laughed, low and smug. "You're lucky I haven't fired you yet, Mandy. Don't push your luck." I felt it then. The sharp, white-hot edge of humiliation. The sting of betrayal, not just by her, but by a system that let people like her thrive. I wanted to scream. To rip the tickets from her perfectly manicured hands. To tell everyone what kind of person she really was. But I didn't. Instead, I smiled. Not a real smile. No, the kind with teeth hidden behind it. "Well," I said softly, "enjoy the show." She grinned like she'd won something. She had no idea how much fun Monday would be. The moment Vanessa turned her back and disappeared into her office, still humming Rocket Man, I dropped the smile. My fingers dug into the edge of my desk. Not because of the tickets, though yes, those meant everything to me, but because of what they symbolized. An entire year of sacrifice, erased in an instant by someone who saw me as invisible. Replaceable. Number not invisible. Useful. Useful until I stopped being quiet. I stared at my computer screen, breathing through the heat building behind my eyes. I refused to cry. Not over her. Not today. Instead, I opened my inbox and searched Rachel Grant, the client, the woman who sent me those tickets. There it was. Her original message. I read it again, slower this time. "Mandy, these are for you. Personally, a small thank you for always going the extra mile. You've made working with your team a joy. Enjoy the show. You've earned it." It was in writing. Clear, director. No room for misinterpretation. But Vanessa had taken them anyway. Not because she needed them. Not because she even liked Elton John. She took them because she could. I stared at that sentence for a long time. Because she could. It echoed in my mind, louder than any music ever could. I pulled out my phone and stared at Rachel's number. And for 5 minutes, I did nothing. This wasn't just about me anymore. If I reached out, it would create waves. If I said the wrong thing, it could cost me my job. but if I said nothing, then she'd win. Again. And people like Vanessa always win when we stay quiet. I tapped the message field and started typing. Hi, Rachel. Thank you again for the Elton John tickets. Unfortunately, I never received them. I believe they were intercepted internally. Just wanted to let you know in case there was a delivery error. Hope you had a great weekend. I stared at the screen. Was it too much? Too little? Before I could overthink it any further, I hit send. 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed. Rachel Grant. Excuse me? What do you mean you never got them? My heart rate spiked. Me. I was told they were used as a strategic networking opportunity. They were apparently given to someone else at my firm. But your note made it clear they were a personal thank you. Rachel. They were. 100%. Sent to you. Unbelievable. Let me make a few calls. I froze. What did that mean? Make a few calls? Before I could spiral, I reminded myself, Rachel wasn't just a client, she was the client. A big-name executive who made deals with 7-figure budgets. If she was angry, people would notice. And that was the point. Let them notice. By noon, the whispers had already started. I heard Carmen mutter something in the kitchen about VIP tickets and Vanessa showing up in rhinestones. Someone else asked aloud why Vanessa, who doesn't even like music, had been at the Elton John concert. I didn't say a word. Instead, I started gathering intel. Over the next few hours, I pieced together more than I expected. Vanessa hadn't taken a client. She'd taken her girlfriend, Natalie, a social media influencer who had posted a not-so-subtle story from the concert that said, "Best surprise ever. Front row. Elton John Queen vibes." Front row. There it was. Proof. I saved the story, screenshotted the caption, zoomed in to catch Vanessa's profile in the edge of the frame. It was her. No mistake. And then I waited. At 4:05 p.m., my desk phone rang. "Hey, Mandy," said a voice that immediately made my palms sweat. It was Carla from Executive Operations. "The partners are calling a short meeting tomorrow morning. Conference room B, 10 sharp. Mandatory." I blinked. "Did they say why?" She paused. "Nope. Just said to be there." My stomach twisted. That was not normal. Meetings like that were rare. And never good. I hung up and sat still for a long time. Maybe this was a mistake. Maybe I'd pushed too far. Maybe she'd win again. But just as the doubt started to creep in, my phone buzzed with a final message from Rachel. "I just spoke with your leadership. Thank you for letting me know." Don't worry, Mandy. I made things very clear. That night, I barely slept. The concert had come and gone. The glitter and the lights, the screaming fans, the piano solos. It had all happened without me. But Monday? Monday was still coming. And Vanessa Blake had no idea she'd just taken center stage in a show she couldn't control. I arrived at the office early Tuesday morning. Too early. The kind of early that screams anxiety and anticipation in equal parts. The floor was quiet. That eerie stillness before the storm. 10 a.m. still felt miles away, but I needed to be there, to see it unfold. I didn't know what the partners had planned. I didn't know how far Rachel had gone. All I knew was this. Today was going to be different. At 9:45, people started trickling into conference room B. Vanessa wasn't among them. Not yet. Her office door remained closed, blinds drawn, as if nothing was out of the ordinary. But I could feel it in the air. Something was brewing. By 9:58, every seat was filled except for one. At 10:02, the door opened. Vanessa walked in like she was entering a cocktail party, not a mandatory executive meeting. Red lipstick, power heels, a blazer too crisp for coincidence. She scanned the room like she owned it, then smiled at me, tight and smug, and took the seat across the table. "All right," she said, crossing one leg over the other. "Shall we begin?" Before anyone could respond, the door opened again. In walked Jonathan Pierce, managing partner. Silver hair, perfect posture, and a reputation for professionalism so sharp it could draw blood. He wasn't alone. Following him was Rachel Grant. The entire room stiffened. Vanessa blinked. Her smile faltered for a fraction of a second. "Rachel?" she said, forcing a laugh. "Wow, this is a surprise." Rachel didn't smile back. "Is it?" Jonathan took his seat at the head of the table. "Let's get started. This won't take long." The room fell silent. "I received a call yesterday from Ms. Grant," he said evenly, "concerning a very serious matter." Vanessa shifted slightly in her chair. "If this is about the concert tickets..." Jonathan raised a hand. "Let me finish." He turned to me. "Mandy, could you confirm something for the record?" I nodded, my voice steady. "Rachel sent me 2 front-row tickets to Elton John's concert as a personal thank you for working on the Simmons account. She addressed the email to me, included a personal note, and shipped them directly to the office under my name." Jonathan looked to Rachel. She nodded. "That's correct." Vanessa cleared her throat. "If I may, I simply believe the tickets would be better used as a corporate asset. I invited a potential investor." Rachel cut in, sharp as a blade. "No, Vanessa, you took your girlfriend. Natalie, right?" The room froze. Rachel pulled out her phone, tapped a few times, and turned the screen toward the partners. "Posted this to 43,000 followers. Tagged herself at the concert. Front row." Vanessa's face paled. Jonathan leaned forward, folding his hands. "Ms. Blake, we have reason to believe you knowingly intercepted a client's personal gift, used it for personal reasons, and misrepresented that action as a strategic company decision." Vanessa's voice cracked, barely holding composure. I thought it was within my rights. We don't have a strict policy on..." "We do now," Jonathan said. "And more importantly, we expect integrity." Rachel's tone softened, but the steel remained. "Mandy worked herself to the bone on that project. I sent those tickets because I wanted her to feel seen. She deserved it." The room was silent. Jonathan turned to me again. "Mandy, I want to formally apologize. This behavior is unacceptable and does not reflect the values of this firm." I nodded, unsure if I should speak. My hands were trembling under the table. Vanessa's lips pressed into a hard line. "This feels a little extreme for concert tickets." "No," Rachel replied, calmly but firmly. "This is about respect, about how you treat the people who make your success possible." Jonathan stood. "Effective immediately, Ms. Blake will be placed on administrative leave pending further review. Her access will be revoked by end of day. We will issue a formal statement to the team." Vanessa's chair screeched as she stood. "You're overreacting." "This isn't up for debate," Jonathan said flatly. "You may collect your things. HR will escort you." Her eyes landed on me, wide, shaking, livid. "You planned this?" she hissed. I met her gaze, calm and unapologetic. "No, Vanessa, you did. I just made sure the right people knew." She turned and stormed out, heels clicking like a ticking clock. The door slammed behind her. I exhaled. For the first time in days, I could finally breathe. Rachel smiled at me. "Don't let people like her dim your light. You've got more to offer than she'll ever understand." And with that, she left the room. But I knew then, this wasn't over. This was just intermission. The real transformation? That was still coming. The office felt different the moment I stepped out of that conference room. Lighter, like someone had opened a window in a stuffy room and finally let the truth in. Vanessa's office door stood wide open, empty. Her nameplate had been removed within the hour. The framed quote on her wall, "Success is the best revenge," was gone. I passed it and didn't feel satisfaction. Not yet. Because the truth is, when someone like Vanessa is finally held accountable, you don't feel victorious. You feel raw. Like your body hasn't caught up with the fact that you're no longer bracing for the next attack. My coworkers were whispering again. Furtive glances, quick nods of approval, relief. One even slid a sticky note onto my desk when I wasn't looking. About time. You did the right thing. But I didn't feel like a hero. I felt tired. Tired from fighting to be seen. Tired of pretending that the late nights and endless effort didn't cost me something. The rest of that day passed in a blur. HR sent a formal memo to the team. There would be a leadership restructuring. Vanessa would not be returning, but no mention of me. No public apology, no announcement, no recognition. Rachel had defended me. Jonathan had backed me. But the company? They were already trying to move on. That night, I sat on my apartment floor, still in work clothes, laptop open but untouched. The Elton John tickets, well, the digital copies I had printed before they vanished, sat beside me. I looked at them and realized it was never about the tickets. It was about how easily someone could rewrite the rules when it suited them, how quickly people can claim what they didn't earn, and how rarely anyone stops them. I didn't want to go back to that place. Not as the same Mandy. Not as the woman who quietly stayed late and gave everything without asking for anything back. Something inside me had shifted. The next morning, my inbox was already full when I logged in. Calendar invites, project timelines, status updates, business as usual. Except something was waiting for me at the top of the inbox. Subject: coffee? From Rachel Grant Mandy, I'm in town another day. Would love to buy you a cup of something strong and talk about what's next. If you're free this afternoon, I'll be at Porterhouse Cafe around 2. You deserve more than what they've been giving you. Let's chat. My heart skipped. Rachel wasn't the kind of person who wasted time. She didn't do casual. This wasn't a sympathy coffee. This was something more. I checked my schedule. A client check-in at 1, internal stand-up at 2:30. I could swing it. Barely. By 1:55, I was walking into Porterhouse Cafe, palms sweating, nerves rattling like dice in a cup. Rachel was already there, seated at a corner table, sipping a dark roast like she owned the place. She waved me over with a smile. "Mandy," she said warmly. "Thanks for coming." "Thanks for inviting me," I replied, sliding into the seat across from her. She leaned in. "Let me get straight to it. I like you. You're smart, you're disciplined, and you handled the whole Vanessa situation with more grace than I would have mustered." I managed a polite smile. It didn't feel very graceful. She shrugged. "Grace doesn't mean passive. It means strategic. And you were." I didn't know what to say, so I sipped my coffee. Rachel set her cup down. "I've been thinking. My firm's expanding. New division, client success and engagement strategy. I need someone to lead it." My eyes widened. "Lead it?" She nodded. "I don't want someone who's been coasting in leadership. I want someone who knows how to hustle, how to solve problems without a blueprint. Someone who's lived the grind. That's you." The air around me seemed to shift. "I don't have an MBA," I said, almost without thinking. Rachel laughed. "Neither do I, but I know talent when I see it, and I don't let it get buried under people like Vanessa." She slid a folder across the table. Inside was a draft offer. Full-time, leadership role, salary nearly double what I was making now. I stared at it, hands trembling slightly. "I don't expect an answer now," she said, "but I hope you'll consider it. You've done more than survive. You've earned the right to thrive." I nodded slowly. "Thank you." As we stood and shook hands, Rachel smiled one last time. "Oh, and next time I get concert tickets," she said with a wink, "they'll be sent directly to you." I laughed. For the first time in weeks, it felt real. As I walked out into the sunlight, one thought echoed in my mind. Maybe the best revenge isn't watching someone fall. Maybe it's finally rising where they tried to keep you down. I didn't sleep much that night. The folder Rachel handed me sat unopened on my kitchen table as if it were radioactive. I'd glanced at it maybe a dozen times. I even picked it up once, but I hadn't opened it. Not because I didn't want it. God, I wanted it. But because opening it meant admitting that everything I'd believed about loyalty, hard work, and being rewarded in due time had been a lie. I had spent years giving everything to a company that would have happily let Vanessa Blake take credit for my work. And they had, for a long time. It took a public humiliation and a near PR disaster for them to even acknowledge my value. And now here I was, holding an offer from someone who saw that value immediately. At 2 a.m., I gave up on pretending to sleep and padded barefoot into the kitchen. I poured myself a glass of water, walked to the table, and sat down. Then I opened the folder. My eyes widened. Rachel hadn't been exaggerating. The offer was substantial. A leadership title, a generous signing bonus, full creative control of a new division, and support staff to build my own team. But what stood out the most was the final line. We believe in rewarding impact, not titles. You've already proven you belong at the top. Now let's build something together. I sat there for a long time rereading that line. No fluff, no corporate buzzwords, just the truth. By morning, I had made my decision. When I walked into the office, the energy had shifted again. Vanessa was gone, but in her place was a heavy silence, like everyone was waiting to see what would happen next. Who would take over her role? Would things really change? I walked to my desk, nodded at a few coworkers, and sat down. 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed. Denise, HR. Do you have a few minutes to swing by my office? I knew what this was. I grabbed my bag and the folder, tucking it inside, then made my way to HR. Denise greeted me with a smile that was both polite and cautious. Mandy, good to see you. Please sit. I did. She folded her hands on the table. First, I want to acknowledge everything that's happened. I know things have been tense, but I also want to personally thank you for how you handled yourself. The leadership team recognizes it. I nodded but didn't say anything yet. She continued, Jonathan asked me to discuss your future with us. There's interest in you taking over a revised client success manager role, possibly with a senior title. We'd like to make that official next week. A promotion with compensation to match. She smiled. It's well-deserved. I inhaled slowly. Then I reached into my bag and slid Rachel's folder across the desk. Denise blinked, her smile faltering. What's this? My resignation. Silence. She opened the folder and read for a moment, eyes scanning the document. I watched the realization dawn on her face like a slow sunrise. You're leaving? I nodded. Rachel Grant offered me a position. I'm accepting. She leaned back, clearly stunned. That's unexpected. No, I said gently. What's unexpected is that it took someone outside this company to see what I was worth. I've worked here for 6 years, and I've only ever been promoted when someone got fired or embarrassed. Denise exhaled. I understand. I do. I just wish we had moved faster. I smiled, but it was sad. So do I. She reached out almost instinctively, like she wanted to stop the bleeding. Are you sure this isn't just a reaction to the Vanessa situation? It's not, I said. It's the result of everything before that. Vanessa was just the final straw. She nodded slowly, setting the folder aside. When will your last day be? Friday. A long pause. Well, congratulations, Mandy. I hope they treat you better than we did. I stood, shook her hand, and left without looking back. By noon, the news had spread. Coworkers stopped by my desk. Some shocked, others congratulatory. A few looked at me like I was abandoning ship, but most, they looked at me like I'd done something they hadn't yet found the courage to do. I spent the rest of the day writing my farewell email. Not bitter, not vengeful, just honest. Thank you for the lessons. Thank you for the late nights and early mornings, the hard days that made me stronger, and the moments that reminded me I was capable of more. I'm moving on. Not because I'm bitter, but because I finally believe I deserve better. And for the first time since this all began, I didn't feel like I was walking away. I felt like I was finally walking toward something. 1 year later, I stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of my new office, watching the city move below me. Skyscrapers glittered in the afternoon sun. Taxis buzzed down avenues like veins pumping life into the heart of everything. My name was etched on the glass door behind me. Mandy Lawson, Director of Strategic Client Growth. The job Rachel had offered turned out to be everything she promised. And more. I had a team now. A real one. People who looked to me for guidance, not approval. People who respected what I had to say because they'd seen what I'd been through. We had built something together. Contracts, partnerships, campaigns. On trust, not fear. No whispering behind closed doors. No red-lipped sabotage in stilettos. I was no longer the overworked employee hoping to be noticed. I was the one people noticed. That afternoon, as I reviewed an upcoming pitch presentation, my phone buzzed. A news alert lit up the screen. Former VP Vanessa Blake files lawsuit for defamation and wrongful termination. I stared at it for a moment. Then I laughed. The sound surprised even me. It was light. Free. Vanessa still hadn't let go. Still spinning her narrative. Still trying to claw her way back into a world that had moved on without her. I tapped the screen and opened the article. There she was, standing on the courthouse steps, flanked by a lawyer who looked like he had stopped caring 10 minutes into the press conference. Vanessa looked tired, bitter. Her hair was flat, her eyes heavy with defiance. The headline beneath her photo read, "I was betrayed. Used. My career was stolen by a jealous subordinate." I scoffed. Subordinate. She was still telling the same story, the one where she was the victim and I was the threat. What she never understood was that I wasn't a threat because I wanted her job. I was a threat because I stopped letting her walk all over me. I put the phone down and returned to my notes, but not even 10 minutes later, another ping lit up my screen. An email this time. From Rachel Grant. Subject, thought you'd enjoy this. Just saw the news. Looks like some people still don't understand that integrity beats ego. Every time. Hope you're thriving, rockstar. I smiled. I was thriving. And not because Vanessa fell, but because I finally stopped believing I had to stay where I wasn't valued. The next day, I got a call from Jonathan Pierce. Yes, that Jonathan, the managing partner from my old firm. His voice was as smooth and composed as ever. "Mandy," he said, "I won't waste your time." I saw the article, and while I can't say I'm shocked, I wanted to reach out. "Why?" I asked, genuinely curious. "Because losing you was the biggest mistake we ever made," he said. "And we'd like to correct that. Would you consider coming back? Senior partner track. Whatever terms you need." I paused. Let that sink in. The same company that once ignored me, sidelined me, let someone else steal my reward, now wanted me to come back. It should have felt triumphant, vindicating, but it didn't. It felt unnecessary. "Thank you," I said, "but I'm not coming back." A long silence stretched across the line. "I understand," he said finally. "If you ever change your mind..." "I won't," I said gently, "but I appreciate the offer." I hung up and exhaled, smiling to myself. I hadn't just survived Vanessa. I had outgrown the entire chapter of my life she represented. As the sun dipped lower over the skyline, I pulled out the photo I kept in my drawer. My dad and me sitting on our old living room floor, surrounded by records. He's smiling. I'm pointing at a vinyl sleeve with wide eyes. Goodbye, Yellow Brick Road. He used to say, "Real class isn't about the car you drive or the office you work in. It's about how you treat people when nobody's watching." He was right. This wasn't just a story about tickets or betrayal. It was about knowing your worth even when no one else sees it. About not letting anyone define you. Not bosses, not titles, not silence. I had walked away from a broken system, and I had built something better. So when people asked what happened with Vanessa, I never bragged. I never gossiped. I just smiled and said, She stole my seat at a concert. I took her seat at the table. Because sometimes the sweetest revenge isn't revenge at all. It's rising so high that the people who tried to bury you can't even reach you anymore.